All right, guys, so I've been trying to tackle one of the biggest projects that I've been avoiding as far as the complexity. And I started out, yesterday playing around, trying to figure out how exactly to go about doing a two-sided engrave. Now, there's a lot of different methods out there. Carbide 3D has videos on how to do it. Countless other YouTube personalities have videos on how they do it. But guys, I've got this weird brain and things don't always work for me the way they do for other people. So, been in the shop today and I have wasted probably about 3 square feet of wood. But you know what? I finally got it. I finally got a method for doing two-sided engraves that is idiot proof so that I can do it. So I figured it out, got it laid out in the software. It's working well, and I thought I'd bring you guys along. So for the ones of you that didn't watch the first video where I was first getting into this, this is the project that I came up with. And this was like a second attempt, so it wasn't terrible. But if you notice, the two pieces are somewhat misaligned, and that was a problem. So I've made a few adjustments to the procedure, and I want to show you how I do it. You can replicate this on pretty much any machine as long as you follow the simple steps. It will make life much easier. So stick around and we'll be right back. All right, guys. So as we have already determined, I am not a CNC whiz. I'm a guy in a shop that has a CNC that's just trying to learn how to work it. So no expert on subject matter here, but I do have a knack for figuring things out and figuring them out in a way that I can understand them and wrap my mind around them more so than some of the videos that I watch, because I watch a lot of videos, guys, and I'm not gonna lie, it confuses me. So it's easier for me to take a problem, figure out a solution in my head, make it work, and then go with it. So that's what I've did. So I came out here this morning, and a lot of you guys were like, you need to use index pins to do a better job, which I would agree. But I didn't do that in the first part because Carbide has their videos of how they do it, and you simply hold the quarter, flip it, do the backside, and it works great for them. For the way they set it up, it works great for them. But it didn't work for me because I came out with my two parts off a little bit. So I needed something a little more dummy proof. And so I tried the pins this morning, but there was an issue with the pins that when I cut this one, guys, if you'll notice, I did the pins, but the artwork was still off. So I'm sitting out here scratching my head trying to figure out exactly what I did wrong. And then it hits me like a ton of bricks. I'm doing bottom left corner, as I always do on my CNC projects, out of habit. And that's creating the problem when I start flipping this thing. It makes it a lot more complex. Yes, you can do it, but it's making it much more complex than it has to be. So took this approach and tossed that to the side, guys, and redesigned the file. So I'm going to kind of walk you over here to the computer and show you what I did with the file. And then we're going to put it into practice over here and show you how it works on the CNC. Because I finally got it to work without any hiccups. And it's simple. It is so simple, I don't know why I didn't figure it out sooner. All right, guys, so here is the two things that were really causing me the most trouble. When you set your job up, take it from me, guys, if you're going to be doing this, set the center of your material as your origin. I was using the bottom left corner. This comes from, I guess the lasers and always doing stuff from absolute coordinates. And that's what I was doing, but I could not get this pin situation to where it didn't create problems. So that's the one biggest thing. Always when you're doing these, this is Clack's way. This is not the end all be all, but if you're doing them Clack's way, set your origin to the center of your material. Take you a straight edge, and I'll show you in a second. Mark the center, line that up, and let it go. The other thing that you'll notice, yes, I've got this cut path in here. The other thing that you'll notice about this is I've taken these two little holes right here. These are my alignment holes. And I'll go ahead and show those over here on the toolpaths. so you can see them. But these are my little alignment pins. All right, those two holes, if you'll notice, let me go ahead and open this up. Those two holes go a total of 29.5 millimeters deep. And the reason for that is they go through the material and then they go about 9 millimeters into my 11 millimeter piece of MDF underneath my project to give me those holes. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that if I put this in the center, when you rotate this, it's kind of, you got to kind of think of it as a 3D design. If I rotate this now, it's going to rotate on this axis right here. This line right here is the line it's going to rotate. Or if you do it the other way, it's going to rotate on this line. Now, if you're going to make it open right to left when you flip it over, you would want to put your alignment pins, like say here and here. You're going to want to run them on this axis as opposed to this axis. I like the flip over the back approach. So I've got both my little alignment pins on this axis here, and it works like a champ. So that's what we're doing. And I am making them, like I said, deep as they go all the way through the material and into the spoil board enough to hold my little pins. So that's how I got that set up, guys. And we'll go to the preview here, and I'll let you see what it looks like. So what ends up happening is I get these two pieces cut out, and I've got this set up to be cut out of a piece of oak that I had left over from a job. And so I've got like a 4-foot section of this thing left, and that's what I've been playing with. And so you'll see that after all of my tool work is done, these are my two alignment pins right here, this one and this one. And what happens is those two, when I flip this thing over, so if I flip it over to here, those things are still technically in the same location, and they're on that center axis. So I don't have it causing any problems. And you'll see that, you know, I've got it set to where these things can dish. I am leaving tabs here and here. And the way I've got it worked out, I'm leaving 4 millimeters of tab on each side when I do the cut. And so they'll wind up with an 8 millimeter thick tab, or thereabouts. From this little peak is 8 millimeters. So I end up with 2 tabs holding it in place just towards the end. But I'm also using tape, and so there's also tape back there holding it. And so far, I've cut out 2 sheets of these things with success and no material coming loose. So there you go. And just kind of show you how to set this up in the beginning. We're just going to go, first thing is you're going to need to set double-sided. And I'm just going to set this to be 200 by 200 by 20 thick. Just we're just coming up with it. Okay, here's where you're going to set your 0. Put it centers for this particular design, the method that I'm using. And you can go flip, you know, left to right, or you can go over the back. I like over the back better. And just hit OK. So when you get in here to the design and you create a tool path on this side of the work area, and we're just going to put this one. I'm not going to put it in the center because that would that would kind of be too easy. So once you get everything created, you've got that, and then let's say you've got some indexing holes, and you put your indexing hole, and assuming you need to measure the size of your dowels, of course, or pins or whatever you're using. And so I've got those 2 indexing holes in there. So now, in order to get this on the back side, I'm just going to select everything, right click, hit copy to other side. And so now when we hit this little button right here, this is going to take us to the other side for the design process and assigning tool lines and all that. Now, just because you set, like if you set this one here and you decide you're going to set this as a pocket, and we'll go ahead and set that pocket. Even though you've assigned tool paths to this side, you can hit and copy to the other side. It's only going to copy the shapes. It's not going to copy the tool paths. So you're going to have to go to each side and set the tool path. The one thing that I will tell you that I have found, and it helps me out, instead of setting both, you know, like if you're trying to cut all the way through this, you're going to do the front side, you're going to do relative, like basically half the thickness of your material, but leave tabs. And then on the back side, you're going to want to go a little past halfway to avoid leaving that little bit of an onion skin in places. So when you go in to set that up, so that would be a recommendation that I would make. So like, let's say this tool path here, we'll go ahead and remove this one, and I'll just show you how I've been doing it. So like this material, we set this up as 20 millimeters thick. So I'm going to go ahead and set a contour here, and I'm going to set this one for 10 millimeters. All right, and we're just going to leave all that outside. All that works. Nothing. And so then we're going to go back to 2D view. I'm going to flip to the other side, and on this side, I'm going to do the same thing. Basically, I'm going to create this contour to cut it out. But instead of 10, I would put it like 10.5, and that's going to allow those bits to overlap, the cuts to overlap just slightly, so you don't have that little piece in the middle like a little onion peel sitting there. So once you get those two done, we're going to reset the preview all the tool paths here, and you will see that, well, preview all sides. It's going to cut all the way through, and you're not going to have a little onion peel. Which the onion peel tip, technically, if your machine is dead accurate, it won't be that much, but it is a little bit of a pain when you do have that. I mean, literally, you can see through it, thin piece of material left in that cut. So by doing it that way, you're coming in from one side, and also the seams, if you're using, especially if you're using like a compression bit or whatever, it makes for a clean cut on both sides. So there you go. That's basically what you need to know to be able to set this up the way that I'm doing it. Like I said, VCarve Pro is what I'm running. This is version 12, and so let's get back to making stuff. All right, guys. So this is what I got going on. So let me kind of walk you through the steps here. What I did is, first of all, I got over here out of the way. This is the one time that I'm glad I have a 4x4 machine, because until Christmas is over with, I'm going to leave this little jig in place. That way, if somebody says, hey, I want one of those that says Baby's First Christmas, I can just knock them out, because I've got this side of the work area over here kind of dedicated to that. Unless I get a big job in, I can go back there, over here, or whatever, and I don't have to touch this little work area. So what I've done is I've took a piece of MDF and took some tape and taped it to the bed of the Shapeoko 5. All right, and this is the material that I've been using. So I've got this, and what I'm doing is I'm cutting it just big enough for the file, and I've got it written on my little spool board that I've put down here. I'm cutting them 210 millimeters long, or 8.25 inches. And the thing that you have to pay attention to when I'm putting them in is they have to go, because this file will barely fit on these. And that's why a couple of the ones I did have flat spots on the edges of bottom, until I realized, which I was using some scrap material, but now I've got this thing set up to where I can literally cut these pieces of material, stick it up here, and I can have an assembly line going for these things. Now, this is a little thicker material than you probably want to use for Christmas ornaments, but it's what I had, so that's why we're using it. I'm going to show you how I go about putting these guys on the machine, and I'm just using the Fastenex tape, and it works really well. I do, some of you guys may be like, oh, you're putting too much, but that's okay. I pay for it, not you, and I want to make sure that the material doesn't come loose, because that's awful. I would rather buy a little extra tape and not have it come loose and have that peace of mind than to be buying bits. So I'm putting me a good bit of this stuff on here. And what I've been doing is trying to leave in the middle where the pins are going to be cut. I've been trying to leave that part open. And reason being is this stuff can gum your bits up and get them a little nasty. So that's something that I'm trying to avoid. So get the tape on here. Now for the aggravating part is to get this little yellow covering off of it. And yes, I'm getting pretty decent at it. I get lots of practice, especially when you're trying to do something that you've never done before. All right, so we got that. Now, the secret is you want to make sure, and I've got the outline of my material marked on this little board, and the way I did that was the very first one that I did, I actually took a pencil and outlined the piece of material. Just gonna make sure the material's on there good, give it a little shove around, make sure it doesn't go anywhere, and we're ready for the first run there. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jog the machine over to my 0, which is still set because once you do the first one, when I do the first one, I set the 0 in the middle of the material. After that, and I've marked, using a pencil, I've marked this little piece of MDF that I put up here. Now I don't have to set the X and the Y. The only thing I'm having to set is the Z. So once I get that up there, it's over the top of the material. I'm gonna go over here and grab my trusty little controller, which is went to sleep. Hang on, I gotta get it turned back on. And I'm gonna be using a piece of the yellow stuff that comes off of the tape. And I'm just gonna lower that Z-axis down. I'm gonna wiggle this little piece of tape until it pinches it. Once it pinches it, I'm gonna come back up that 1/4 millimeter and I'm good to go. So we're zeroed on the X and the Y already. Now what I've got to do is go in here and reset the Z. Once I do that, guys, I'm done. I'm going to load the file, which is the top Jenny bit file. On the top, this file is going to do the cutout. It's going to do the cutout, the whole half of the holes, and the alignment pins with this one file that I'm fixing to execute on here. And if I were going to be doing a bunch of these, guys, I wouldn't be doing them 2 at a time. I would set this up to where you could run 10 of them. With a 4 foot by 4 foot machine, that shouldn't be hard to do. You would just cut your material longer and then just stack them, but you would still want to go with the center of the workpiece being where the pins go. So, and I didn't want to drill into my actual spool board, so that's the reason I'm using this little sacrificial piece of MDF. But here we go. So got that on there. The Genie file is loaded, and we're going to get this and get it started. All right, so the engrave went well. Everything worked like it's supposed to. I got very minimal chips, thanks to the shopsmith over there. Give them a little bit of a recognition today. So that is the first engrave, and that is simply the cut. So I'm gonna bring the machine back over here, put the next bit in, and we're gonna run the other 2 passes on this side, and I'll save you on the video, and we'll come back and flip it over and do the other side. Done. And now for the final tool path on these it's going to be the little roundover radius. This bit I got from IDC Woodcraft because Cody over at Cadence Manufacturing currently doesn't have one. All right, so there we have it. Got the round over done, and it looks good so far. So let's get that guy loose from there. And we're gonna flip this over, and hopefully our pins will do what they're supposed to do. First thing I gotta do is take all this tape off, and that's gonna take me a second. All right, so I've got my little pins already cut, and they go. Hang on, let me get the vacuum and get the dust out of those holes. So the pins go in the two left holes right there. And then once we take this piece, what'll happen is this will align with those two pins right there and sit down on there. Now before I do that, I've got to add tape. But like I said, I do have the tabs that are basically half the tab is left on one side when it cuts, and the other half of the tab is left on the other side when it cuts. But the cool thing about it is the way this file is laid out with the ridge around the edge of the ornament, the tape is actually going to help hold the ornament a little bit as well. So that's it's good to have too much hold down than not enough, in my opinion. Bits are expensive, tape not so much. It's not cheap, but it's a lot cheaper than a bit. All right, so this ought to work a little better now, guys. So the way that I've got my pins, both, one of them's to the left, that also makes sure that I orient it properly. Because if I had to put one in the middle, and then if I'd had 3 pins, it would have been a little confusing which way to go. So by having the 2 pins left like that, it makes it a little easier for me to make sure I cannot put it on here wrong. Because between the indexing pins, the line, all of that stuff, surely I can get it right? So I'm going to knock that down on there a little bit. As you can see, my little line right here is a little off, but that really only matters on that first cut. I'm hoping I didn't mess my tape up by pulling it off of there. I think we're good. So now we've got the piece back on there. The second round of cuts should start showing us whether we hit it or not. And I'm pretty confident we did. All right, so now without resetting to 0 or anything, I'm bringing my machine back down here. I need to get back to the spindle. We're gonna change back to the Jenny bit, which I'm gonna have to clean this one. It's getting a little dirty. So we're gonna go back down here. I'm gonna take this little profile bit off, which I could technically run it second. We may do that this go around. I'll lay it here close. So putting the Genie back on there. This is the Genie compression bit. It does a pretty good job of cutting this stuff quick, not leaving a whole lot of tear out or snags. And I'm taking kind of small bites because I don't want this oak to be splintering everywhere. I'm gonna come over here and set my 0. Raise that up a little bit. You can use a little bit 0 setter, but guys, to be honest with you, I kind of like doing it the old-fashioned way. And there we go. 0 is physically set, but now I've got to go over here in the software and make sure I set the Z. All right, here we go, guys. Moment of truth. We're going to see if the cuts line up. I'm pretty confident they will at this point. So here we go. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and run the little edge, the round over bit across the top. That way that is done, and then all we'll like is the bowl bit doing the recess. Like I said, ideally I'd be doing like 10 of these at a time, and because I'm spending about as much time doing bit changes as I am engraving. But like I said, it's never a bad thing to repeat stuff over and over, because muscle memory is formed by repeating. So by doing this, at least I am working on the remembering to set the Z, because if I forget to set the Z, things can get bad. So speaking of which, let's set the Z axis right quick, and we'll get this cut sent out there. So I'm All right, so that did the holes for the string as well as the outer boundary, so we're good on that. Carbide, if you're watching, can we please have it to where we can set a location for the spindle to go to after it completes an engrave? I would love to be able to have it leave here and come up here to the front so that I could just change my bit instead of having to send it back up here every time. So Carbide, if you watch this video, please help us out. Give us that capability. I would like it to be able to set it to where when it finishes a cut, it comes here, so I can change the bit. Or it could just go back to the 0. That's fine too, but I prefer here in case it's a really big job. But I'm setting it to the 0 right now because I can get to it fairly easy, and it allows me, when it gets time to actually set the 0, it allows me a little more leeway. So get the Jenny bowl bit in there. Like I said, guys, if you're looking for bits, I'll drop a link to Cadence as well as IDC in the description below. I'm going to move this over to the side here. Also, if you haven't got your Shipoko to where you can use a controller like this to control it, I've got a video on that as well. But with this PlayStation or this Xbox controller, you can actually, it's natively set up in Carbide to run it, and it can be a little buggy. So I've got a backup program that I use to kind of make sure if it connects one way, great. If it doesn't, connects the other way, that's fine too. So being able to do it with a controller is much, much quicker and easier than trying to use the keyboard, because it's hard to use the keyboard over here. I do have a wireless keyboard, and I can use it over here. This is just cooler. So there we go. I've got the physical Z set, and I'm not going to forget even though I'm talking to you guys, I'm gonna go over here and set my software Z. So now we need to run, load the file. This is gonna be my file I named bottom 2 bowl bit, which I'm doing them in the wrong order, but nobody cares. So let this dust shoe down just a little. Because so far, if you look at my workspace, guys, the Shopsmith is doing an excellent job. So if there's that CNC guy in your life who needs a good dust collection, go check with my guys over at Shopsmith. It works really well. It worked. It worked. Like I said, learning this stuff to me is half the fun, guys. Being able to take a problem and just get after it until I can figure out what works for me. That's pretty awesome. Now, I do appreciate some of the tips that you guys gave me. I will say I had been doing a little research on the different approaches. So I'm not a total idiot, but what I was doing was trying to figure out what way I liked, what worked best for me. Because these machines, like I said, not all machines are the same, not all softwares are the same, and you got to figure out what works for what you have. And that was where we was at. So check it out. So let me get the camera over here where we can see a little better, and we'll go over this. All right, guys, 2 days. That's how long it took me to figure it out. A little bit of wasted material, 2 days. But yeah, compared to this, a lot better. All right. So a couple of things I want to point out to a lot of you guys. A whole bunch of folks were giving me information, and it was good information, no doubt. For their machines, I'm sure it would have worked great. But with this machine and the software that I run, which is the Carbide Motion, it's a little different. Setting preset locations and being able to send the head over to those preset locations is not as easy, at least not that I'm aware of, and correct me if I missed something. But you can walk it to that location, but as far as typing it in and hitting go to, it's really not a thing that I have found. But doing it this way, once you set that file up, you put your little sacrificial lamb on there for the design. You put that piece of material down there, you set up these dowel pin holes, and you cut that first one, or that first side. It's easy peasy from that point forward. Like I said, it's awesome now that I got it done. So let me just show you how it looks before we take it out of here. You can see I did leave the tabs, and the way I did that is I left a 4mm tab on the cut on each side, and so I wound up with enough tabs to hold that in there securely. Now, the way that I would get those off there is either a bandsaw or a little oscillating saw. We'll use my oscillating saw because that's what I got handy. And I use it on a lot of other stuff. These are a little harder to get to because of where they're located. There really wasn't a good place to put them that wasn't round. But if I go on the outside edge, I can cut those off pretty easy. So all in all, I mean, I got a little bit of fuzzies, but most of the, let me wipe it. Most of the little fuzzies that you see, the Genie bit does a really good job straight off of the machine of getting rid of those fuzzies, but you're gonna have a few. There's a part of the tab I gotta take off, and there's the other part of the tab. And I've got a little trim router that I'll do that with, makes it simple. Little flush cut bit with a roller on it, and there we are, good to go. So a little bit of sanding may be required. Like I said, most of this dust, I can just like wipe it off. Even in the hole there, that little piece right there was pretty much sitting there. I have found that that profile bit actually leaves a little bit of fuzz, but with the settings that I'm running, it's doing a pretty good job. I had to play with that. With those profile bits, you've got to find that sweet spot to get it to go. So, wouldn't be a laser workshop if there wasn't one last step that needed to happen to this ornament. Let's engrave one, guys. All right, so for this project, we're gonna make this quick and easy, guys. I broke out the Laser Pecker 5, and that's what we're gonna run. Let me get everything powered up. I had everything disconnected while I was operating the CNC. So the cool thing, and if you don't have a laser and you have just a CNC, it's not a bad little machine. So let me get you over here where you can see a little better. So for doing this, I'm going to use one of these my early ones, because I'm saving the good blanks in case somebody orders them. This is one of the ones that I messed up and got too close to the edge on this morning. So we're going to use this one. But if you don't have a laser and you have a CNC, but you want to do cool stuff like this, but you really don't want to dedicate the space to it, here you go, guys. All right, I'm going to lay that in there. Y'all know I'm a light burn fanatic, and I use light burn a lot. But I have a lot of friends and a lot of people who specifically, like I got a friend of mine who just wanted a machine to be able to put his maker's mark on materials and stuff like that. That is where something like this, I think, comes in handy. So what I'm going to do is I've opened up the app. This is their little app, and you can do this from your phone. It's got the little Santa Claus on there. I'm just going to hit the preview button, and it's going to preview the area around the Santa Claus. So I'm going to go ahead and position the ornament where I want it. I've got that set. The two dots are touching, so that indicates to me that it's in focus. I'm just going to put this little cover back on here. The app, it's a little weird to understand at times, but the preview is done, so I'm going to hit next. I'm just going to go to general engraving settings. All right, just 1K. It does high resolution stuff, but we don't need that right now. So it sent the file. So we've got the speed, or like this is the penetration, and this is the which is power, and this is speed. This is where it kind of gets us light burn folks getting mixed up. So for penetration here, I'm going to set this at 70. And then speed, I'm going to run the speed to like 50 because I don't want it to go too fast. Okay, and one pass. And so I'm using the 450 nanometers, and I got it set to fill. So we just hit start, confirm focus, yes, and it's off. It's engraving. Even though it has a shield, wear these, just in case. But all in all, for small stuff like this, if you were wanting to just make some ornaments, or if you were someone who made cutting boards, you could use this to just put your mark on there. It's quick, easy, portable. This one, you can actually pick it up and carry it. I don't use it a lot on some of my projects, but I did want to use a Galvo on these because doing one-offs, it's just easier to frame it up using a Galvo than it is a typical gantry machine. Now, if I was doing 100 of them, I would set up one of the big machines, build a jig, and do it that way. But just doing this one, the Laser Pecker 5 does a really good job. It's a 20-watt fiber, 20-watt diode, so something like this is relatively easy for it to do. And got that done. And so there you go, guys. There we are. All right, guys. So there you have it. The easiest way that I know of to do two-sided CNC work. Now, there may be easier ways with other machines. I've got the VCarve 5 Pro. I'm running Carbide Motion, and I'm using VCarve Pro. So there you go. But for me, this is simple. I can see now I'm going to be doing more of the two-sided stuff because doing it this way is really, really simple. Now, if you're doing a really big engraving. Of course, you're going to have to either just break down and put holes in your bed of your machine, or just use a bigger piece of material. Me personally, I've got some material laying around here that I'll probably never use for anything. And if I'm doing something that big and it's a job, I'll just work that into the cost of it for a piece of 1/2 inch MDF to go underneath there, just a sacrificial board. But there you go. I think all in all, they turned out pretty nice. There's the two, this is the 3D effect and then the laser engraved, because that's the two different things that I see me doing with these. Either doing a 3D effect on them or doing laser engraved. And I think that's something that could go into, like I said, a lot of baby's first Christmas, that kind of thing. Now, my material's a little bulky, okay? 1/2 inch material, maybe not the best material, but you get the idea. I could have planed this down. If you have a table saw, or if you have a bandsaw with resaw capability, you could actually take and thin this down a little bit using the resaw function on your bandsaw. Mine, it's not that great for resawing, so we just went with it as it is. And I didn't want to just sit there and plane the stuff down to 1/4 inch. So, but doing the two-sided, guys, that is something that I never thought I would be able to pull off as well as I have. And look at that, guys. Not even so much as a line. I haven't really sanded this much, but you can barely tell where the two parts of the cut go together right there. This is straight off of the machine, two-sided, and it worked. So I'm happy. I'm tickled about it. But all in all, guys, good project, fun, easy. The thing about it that I like the most is whether you have a Genmitsu Prover 3030, a 4040, whether you have a Masuda, well, I hope I say that name, no matter what kind of CNC you have, you can do this, or at least similar. A small item like this would be really easy. As long as you have at least that much work area and some room for pins, you can make this happen. So there you go, guys. Two-sided engraving. It's intimidating, but it's not that difficult once you get the right process. So if you've done it another way and you try my process and you like it, by all means, drop a comment and let me know. If you think I'm a total idiot for doing it this way, you can tell me that too. People generally do. But this is the way that works for me. This is the way I'm going to do it. So until next time, guys, be safe and have a good day.